So you not only tell them, you know, are you in a wetland, are you in a forest, are you in a prairie? They study that, and they watch these numbers from year to year in that area. That's why once you pick a particular site that you want to monitor, you know, they hopefully, someone else or you come back the next year and do the same area. It has to be a public area. You can't just say, well, there's a farmer's field behind my house, can I do that? No, it can't be private land. It has to be public land. We hope you do Eagle Marsh or Arrowhead Prairie out southwest on Hoyt Road. But if you had an acre's property near you, you could do that also. And we'll get into all that later, but you can be thinking about where you might want, and I've got some maps of our properties that you can pick one of the 15 trails that you might want to monitor. And I know from last year we had 6 monitors, and I know part of them what trails they're going to do again. So you might be thinking about where you might want to go here or elsewhere. You have to do your monitoring between 10 in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon. That's because that's peak time for butterflies. Generally, it has to be 70 degrees and not a stormy day like today. You're only required to do this 6 times, but it can't be all in 1 week, every day. You can only do it once a week. Last year we we found 276 butterflies, our team. And there were, I believe, like 24 species altogether from all the team members. The most common one was the cabbage butterfly, that little white one. We had 117 of those guys. In second place was the least skipper. Third was the pearl crescent. Fourth was the red admiral. And the fifth was a UFO skipper. They don't want you to try to guess what you saw. But if you knew it was a skipper because it just kept close to the ground, jumping or flying, they would rather you say an unidentified skipper than try to say, what it was. You'll want to take your camera with you because a lot of these, especially skippers, they'll land and you can get up and take a picture of it. And then one of the sheets I'll give you has Rhonda Speak's address. She's at the Kalamazoo Nature Center, and she coordinates the Michigan Butterfly Network, which Indiana is part of. And if you send her that picture, she'll know exactly what it was, and she'll tell you, and then you can put it down on your recording sheet. Yeah, we do this between like June 20th and September the 1st. You imagine an imaginary dome over you, and you can go 16 feet above your head, 16 feet to the left, 16 feet to the right, 16 feet straight ahead of it. And you can hold this in, and this is about 16 feet. I know it's not on the trail if I do this, but it's just quite a distance. So that's about 16 feet. You can just give you an idea of how far. So if you saw one way on over there, you can't count. This first paper in your folder that has the arrow on it, when you first start out, at the top there it says temperature in Fahrenheit on the left corner. You do the beginning temperature and the end temperature when you're done with your monitor. the wind, the beginning and end. You might say, well, relatively still, 1 to 3 miles an hour. How do I know if it's 1 to 3 miles an hour? Well, follow the arrow down to the bottom, and if smoke's going straight up, it's calm. If it's relatively still, it barely moves the leaves. So that helps you determine the miles per hour. And that's what they're talking about when they mention the wind. Sky, you just look up and it tells you in the next box down there, clear, mostly clear, partly cloudy, mostly cloudy, overcast, and the percent of the sky that is like that. So partly cloudy would be 40 to 60% of the sky would have clouds. And you mark that down at the beginning and the end. Now you can make copies of this and take it with you. Personally, I just get a blank sheet of paper and I know the questions, you know, the temperature and the time, and I just write it on a blank sheet of paper. EM, Eagle Marsh or whatever. The date that you did it, that would go on the blank sheet of paper too. Your start time would have to be after 10 in the morning, and your end time. And generally it takes an hour, or some people go 2 miles, so it might take them 2.5 hours to do that. Observer would be you, and the scribe, if you take somebody with you, they're called a scribe. And they would hold the clipboard, and you'd say monarch, and you'd mark it down. But supposedly, the scribe is not allowed to say, oh, there goes a sulfur butterfly. Although I don't understand that. If it's within a 16-foot range, it seems like, you know, you could count it, even though the scribe was the one that saw it. But for some reason, they say only the observer can actually record it if there's 2 people there. Oh, and then you see those A, B, C, D, E's at the top on both sides? Whichever side you're on. That's talking about the habitat. So pull out the one that says habitat. There's 18 habitats. And when you email or call Rhonda to register your site, you have to tell her what habitat you have. And sometimes you say, well, I'm not sure what this habitat is. Well, if you take a picture of it and then, you know, write down a description of the area, Rhonda, who's the head honcho up at the Michigan Butterfly Network, she'll tell you maybe it's a grassland, or maybe it's a wooded wetland, you know, and you can see all these. Wow.
That's a weird sounding butterfly right there.
He's got documents and resources. These are some of the things that I included in your notebook. But I'm going to email each of you a video that Michigan they did their training in May, and it includes what they told each of their people on how to monitor and a lot of picture IDs of butterflies. So I just sent it, so I think Dave and Pam should have got it if you looked at your email today. Take a break, it's more than 3 minutes. You actually have to record that on your timesheet that you took a 10-minute break, and then you went on.
So it needs to be less than 3 minutes?
Yeah, if you stop for less than 3 minutes, you don't have to record it as a break time. Yeah, because you take pictures and you're recording the name of the butterfly, so you know that takes sometimes a little longer, but I'm talking about new accounts. Rhonda will take care of that for you. Because she even actually approves when you send in your results each week. And they don't want you to pile this up and do it, 2 weeks later. They like you to do it that day or the very next day after you've monitored. And then she has to approve it. Because if she finds a butterfly that doesn't exist in Indiana, she'll let you know right away. Where did you get that from? And she won't, approve it. You have to take it off the list and then go on from there. But we'll go through some of the books that will be helpful too. And then the last page you have is important websites. And they're mostly YouTube. And these were some that I found that were 90% of the butterflies that we had, even though some of these are from Canada, southern Canada. But you can look those up. The virtual training, I'll send that out to you emails today. That's a very good one, and it does mostly butterfly IDs. Although we'll go over the protocols that we talked about too. And then Rhonda Spink, there she is, to register your first time and find out what that picture was that you took. And they also say if you want to take a net with you, you can, and then put it in a plastic jar, and then you can look at it closely and try to ID it or take a picture of it. But then release it. You can't take it home with you. And I do that sometimes, especially for the skippers that are on the ground. It's really easy to sweep your net, and you'll pick up a couple skippers to try to ID. And to enter your data, once you've communicated with Rhonda, and the next time you're ready to tell them how many you found, you just go to pollardbase.org. And there's at the top corner it says sign in, and you'll put your ID and your password, and then it'll take you right to there's two different sites. If you remember the ones, there's several names for them, but one of them takes you to everybody's butterfly place. You'll find them in Michigan and in Indiana, and it'll list where they're at. But the one you want is the one that is for recording the results. And then you'll find your name there and put in how many monarchs you saw, how many cabbage butterflies and all that. But that will come later once you've got all that information from Rhonda. And there's, on the other side, we've got, these are just a few butterflies in the Midwest. With the Buckeye to the Viceroy. It's just a quick overview. I think, let's see, I don't know if I've got enough for everybody. If you already have this one, these belong to Little River. So make sure, and by the way, if after hearing all this today, you think, I'm not going to do this, just leave your brochure here and read it. But otherwise, you have one? No?
I've got one.
You've got one.
I have one, but let me just look, see if it makes it the same.
Yeah, there we go.
Give some quick ID tips for common species in the 5 families of butterflies that we have here. Then we'll do a little recap, and finally I'll talk briefly about using a butterfly net, which is sometimes necessary when identifying butterflies. So, let's get started. How to identify butterflies? Well, like most things, identifying butterflies is really helped by experience. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the more you will remember. And experts on butterflies that have been doing it for a long time can identify most species in their area just based on their gestalt, or their just overall sense of the butterfly, how it flies, how it moves, where you see it, the general pattern of color. Those are people that have been working on that for a long time. So if you're not there yet, don't feel bad. You know, if you're just starting, you've got time to learn, and butterflies are not that hard to learn. So in addition to having that experience and memory, it's just as important to know what resources to use to help you get that knowledge, to learn, and what features to look at. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. So let's hope you get a lot of experience doing that this summer. So I'd like to briefly go through some details of butterfly anatomy. And this is not so that you can be experts in the anatomy of insects or butterflies, but because when you're reading descriptions of species, they'll often refer to particular parts of butterflies' bodies, and you need to know where they're talking about so that you can go and check to look for what they're telling you to find, be it a spot or a line or what have you. So, like all insects, butterflies have 3 body parts. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. They also have 2 pairs of wings, the forewings. Those are the ones closest to the head, and the hind wings, that's the second pair. And you'll find that most of the useful identification features are on the wings, so that will often be what people are referring to, although occasionally they refer to antennae or the general size of the butterfly. Now on the wings, there are often cells. That will be areas bordered by veins. Those are thicker, harder parts of the butterfly's wings. Let's look at the forewings and the hind wings a little more closely in the next slide. So, understanding the terminology when a description is talking about wings can be really helpful when reading species descriptions. So, we always work from the body outwards. So the apex is the furthest away from the body, the very tip, and same the margin of the wing is the furthest away from the body, the outside edge. And so sometimes a description will refer to a marginal band, and that would be a band of color or pattern that's near the margin of the wing, and then submarginal, which would be just inside that. There might be a median band, and that would be a band in the middle of the wing, and then post-median would be after that, further away from the body than that. So sometimes these pictures are reading a species description, it will point to exactly what it's talking about, but if it doesn't, it helps to know these basic features. It's really important to look at both sides of butterfly wings. So as you'll see in these pictures here, there's 3 different species in the upper side of their wing and the lower side of the wing, and you'll see that the patterns are different. So you do need to look at both the upper and lower side often to be able to identify a butterfly. Field guides will usually show you images of both the upper and lower wings for a species, and if it doesn't, it's because either you're very unlikely to see that side of the wing, so butterflies usually sit with their wings closed, so you're never going to see the upper side, or it's not that relevant for identifying it that you really only need to see one side. But generally, you'd like to be able to see both if you can. Families and common species, let's do a bit of a recap. So, most important identification characteristics for butterflies are on their wings. And you should always try to look at both the upper and lower sides of the wings if you can, and to get photos of them if you can. It's important to look at all of the small details when looking at butterflies to see if they match up. So read that field guide. Don't just use one feature. So if you say, oh, it's black with yellow spots, it's got to be that species, just read through all the characteristics to make sure it all matches and you're not missing a species that looks pretty similar but has some important differences. On that note, knowing which species look similar and the key differences to separate them is also helpful. And field guides are generally pretty good at pointing those out to you, especially the Butterflies of Ontario field guide. Flipping through a pocket guide or a field guide or using the auto-identification feature on a naturalist can help you get close to a species, but you'll usually need to follow up using a hard copy field guide or a website. Remember that some butterflies are very difficult or even impossible to tell apart from only a photo. So other clues like the habitat, the date, and the host plant can be really helpful. And if you note those things, you can always add those notes to your iNaturalist observation. We've provided a checklist of the 99 species of butterfly that you might see in a watershed that you could use?
Well, this one is included on your sheet that said something about butterfly ID videos, and you saw probably a little over half of it, but you may recognize it if you pull that one up, but that's the one we saw in training. Now, normally we would go out now and do a hike, but I just don't think it's going to be muddy, and butterflies are not dumb. They're staying down away from the rain and trying to stay warm. So they're not going to be flying in this weather condition. But there's a couple people that couldn't make it today that I said we'd set up another time for them. So I will let you know when we're going to do their hike, and if you're available and you want to come out on a nice, warm, sunny day, we'll let you know when that date is, and we can hike and do a mock recording of what we see.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the commitment ideal to the training if you decide to commit? What is it, like weekly, or what is it?
You have to do
the observation.
You have to do 6 observations.
What's that?
6.
6 of them.
6 observations.
Okay.
That's the only requirement.
Minimum of a week.
About
Yeah,
a week
they
apart.
can't be all in the same week. You have to
Okay.
do one a week.
Once a week for 6.
Yeah, and you can vary it. Sometimes, I have like a Tuesday, I go out, and that next week I wasn't there on Tuesday. I mean, I couldn't go on Tuesday, so I go on Wednesday,
Yeah,
or maybe even Monday.
right.
You don't have to try to get the same day each
About
week,
the
but
same
if you have a meeting or something, you can't do it, or maybe it's storming, and you're not going to go out and
Like I said,
this.
between 10 and 4.
Yeah, it has to be between 10 and 4.
I didn't write that on the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 4:30, I guess. But I'll send you the email that overviews everything we talked about today that they used in their training at Kalamazoo in May, and that'll clear up a lot of questions.
Sure.
But,
So now, explain to me again how I get signed up for a particular trail.
okay, that's something we'll do if you have to know that before you call Rhonda or email Rhonda. So you can let me know, today if you can, what trail you would like to do, or
You say
an acre's property, or an arrowhead. Let me know which one you would like to do, and we can do that, and we'll forego our hike. But I would, if you want to look at some maps, is anybody interested in Arrowhead?
No, I think I do.
That's the one out on Boyd Road. And this is just another one, Eagle Marsh.
Could I see that?
Eagle Marsh.
Russ, I'm interested in Trail 2.
Trail 2, okay, let me get my paper here and write that down.